every successful person got there by going through tough times. Success is a hard-ass teacher who likes to knock you around along that journey. You know, it takes real guts to not give up and keep going. We'll hear stories about failures and how these leaders flip the script to create success. I'm John Schultz. Join me and let's discover how success is never really overnight. Welcome to the John Schultz podcast. We have a tremendous guest today, Mike Rabil, co-founder and CEO with his brother Paul of the Premier Lacrosse League, the PLL. It was founded in October 2018. The league traveled to 13 major North American cities, 14-week regular season, brought tons of amazing lacrosse players to the table. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, John. I'm excited to be here, man.
Yeah, this is good. This is exciting because it's such a unbelievable thing you're doing right now, and it's in the middle of it, and we're going to hear a lot about it. But before we get there, we're going to go back to young Mr. Rabil and ask you, like, how would you describe yourself as a kid growing up?
How would I describe myself? A good question. I think I would probably describe myself as relatively active. I probably was a busybody, and I was always looking to keep myself occupied, bouncing off walls, as my mom would describe. And I think I probably bring that same energy to work every day, but hopefully in a more tempered way, a more controlled way.
It's good. Listen, I was bouncing too when I was younger. I always was looking to find ways to either do some work or create something new. And it's good. It's lasted throughout my career as well. So what was the first job then that you had growing up? How did that happen?
Yeah. It's a good question. You know, I think, I think I've always been working, and different than probably other folks. I've always had a job, and ever since actually beginning in high school, my brother and I used to start by shoveling driveways. That was a big focus of ours. We would go to the neighborhoods with the biggest driveways, the Snowball Show, in the snowing season. And then I quickly moved on to actually serving ice cream at a local franchise called Maggie Moo's. Did that for about 3 years. Then I got into construction. I did that through the end of high school and through the beginning of college. And then I moved more towards formal internships. But I've always had the knack for working. I've always had the knack for trying to earn money. And I think that's carried over a little bit into what we're doing today.
So, I mean, obviously you have a sports family, you know, your brother's career and accolades are off the wall, right? You know, heralded as the best player in lacrosse ever, which is, you know, not an easy sport to be that in, and you in football. So what did sports do for you? I mean, obviously you said bouncing off the walls, you were trying to find things to do as you were younger. How did sports frame you as a person, and where do you think that had impact on you?
It's a good question. I think sports for us, you know, my dad still is a big sports fanatic. He went to University of North Carolina and was a big Tar Heel basketball fan. So that was kind of always an emphasis for us is Carolina basketball. And so we were actually basketball players, and we always dreamed of playing college basketball. But one of the things my dad did, I think, really well, my mom in particular, both of them, was allowed us to play any sport we wanted, which I think is a little bit different in youth sports these days. One of the things that, you know, we've seen is that there's a lot of specialization, and that really didn't happen for us. It was basketball, it was soccer, it was lacrosse, it was football when we got older. And then you kind of gravitate towards what you enjoy, and you kind of gravitate towards what you're good at. And I think the lessons that we learned were really how to manage adversity. I think that's what sports really teaches you at a young age. And then teamwork. You can have as many conversations with your parents as you want about those things, but until you experience adversity, you know, winning, losing, how to act, how to share with your teammates. I really feel that a lot of the skills that I've seen that have either helped us in our career or people at the PLL in their careers can be learned at the youth sports level. Teamwork, being helpful, how to win with grace, how to lose and battle through adversity, perseverance. those things I think that were taught to us through youth sports.
And I think the big thing that I feel that sports brought me was something bigger than yourself, right? Like, unless you're a tennis player or maybe a golfer, you need to have everyone aligned in sync and playing together and collaborating, right? In a way that you all can win together. And that's like for any company. So I totally agree, and it is so much more organized today. Everyone sort of has a lane they stay down. I don't know whether that's good or bad. I sort of like that I could try lots of things as well. So you did that, and then you went on to college. You went on to Dartmouth, right?
Yep.
And you had an amazing career there. I guess you were the captain. For how many years were you captain there?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I keep saying good question because these are good questions, John. No one's ever tied that together, and it's making me really reflect on, being named captain, voted on by my teammates, was honestly probably one of the biggest honors I've had in my life. And I'm not just being hyperbolic about that. If you think about, 100 guys on a football team and playing college football, even though it was in the Ivy League, it wasn't the SEC. It was very serious to me. It was a commitment I made to the school. It was a commitment I made to myself and my teammates. And being able to be elected captain my senior year by my teammates was really meaningful, because you're the guys that you're going to battle with every day, and saying, hey, that's who we want us to represent us at the beginning of each game, and find and inspire leadership. And so how that's tied to entrepreneurship, I think about the hard times of playing football, college football. And I certainly don't want to sound like a martyr, but, playing college football, particularly when I was playing and dating myself, 2002 through 2007, it was 2-a-days for 2 weeks, full contact, full pads. And that was really hard. And I'm glad they've changed those rules. But those times of putting on wet pads and, hitting each other for 2 straight weeks, and going against guys who are 4 years older than you, and having to persevere through those really hard times. I actually reflect on those when I'm exhausted now, or I'm taking a flight that I don't want to. The thing about the PLL is, this is our 5th season. We still work like it's our first season, like a startup league. And we've made a lot of progress, but I think the hard thing about it is, as a single entity league, we control all the teams, all the event experiences. And when a trade association, the league just kind of runs their business. All the teams operate the game days. And so we travel game days, we operate the game days, and we have an amazing staff that does most of the work, but we still travel a lot. So on top of the work that we have to do at the league, in the new league, we travel and operate our games. And that experience is difficult. So I often think back to my times of playing football at Dartmouth and say, if I can make it through that, I can definitely continue to push forward and try to show and be a leader at the PLL.
It's funny. I had Rudy on the podcast, the actual Rudy.
Oh, amazing.
And he, they had the 2-a-day. I mean, you saw it on the movie, what
Right.
they went through. It has changed, but I think that created a lot of grit in the players, and, I'm sure they still do it in a positive way, but
Totally.
you obviously experienced that. So, all right. So you had this great experience, and it looks like each period of your life, you've learned something new, and, you felt that you had obstacles to get there, and challenges. So you get out of college, and, this to me, I know well, because I started out the same way. You started at Jones Lang LaSalle as a real estate broker. I started out as a real estate broker. I'm still in the real estate business, obviously. But what made you go in that direction? Because it sort of doesn't fit what I thought you would go.
I think, one of the things, I know you have a lot of different listeners on this call, but one of the things that at least I try to spend time, we have a lot of interns during our season. I think we've had over 30 interns just this summer working with us through our season. And I gave a talk to our interns. And I think with real estate, and tying this to your question, it was about trying something. And one of my mentors, he's still a coach at Dartmouth football, a guy named Kurt Oberg. He used to work at JLL and the Boston office, play football at Dartmouth. He had a great real estate career. And so you often sort of gravitate towards mentors of yours and their careers. And for me, it was never hey, anything particular about real estate. I think it was exciting to be around such talented people in an asset class that's exciting and learn about that asset class. But for me, it was just trying an industry. It was, I wanted to try my first part of my career in sales. My dad has been a career salesperson, and I draw a lot of inspiration from his work ethic and his really attention to detail with clients. And so for me, it was pairing what I saw from my mentors, what I saw from my dad, tying that to a really exciting asset class in real estate, and getting a bunch of corporate hygiene at JLL. I think that they're a best-in-class shop, and I was able to really learn from a very sophisticated group of individuals in Washington, D.C.
So I know you have to cold call, especially back then.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
so
Wow.
funny I'm even saying that word because today it's a whole different way that you do it. From having to go out and actually create something from nothing, which is really what an entrepreneur does. And I think real estate and brokerage allows you to do that with clients. How did that, and what was your biggest takeaway from having to go out and actually pitch? And has
Yeah.
that helped you today?
Oh my God, man! I tell you what, we could talk about sales forever. I think that sales is probably one of the most important skills that anyone in any career should learn. I mean, if you just break it down, in any industry, there's always a sales component, whether it's internal sales, external sales. I mean, I'm doing a component of sales right now with you, John. I'm talking about my career. I'm talking about the PLL. There are components of sales throughout this and what we're doing here. And so I think what cold calling really did for me, it was such an emphasis when I first started. And it's funny, you know that. I mean, it's not funny. You're in the real estate business, but it's funny you call that out. Sales, and specifically cold calling decision makers at companies about the real estate footprint, taught me to get outside my skis. I didn't know what I was saying. I didn't know what I was doing. It was my first job, but I simply wanted to try to get a meeting, to get in front of them and bring in a senior broker. And that opportunity and that sort of rush that you get in the making those calls and connecting and trying to find when people are in the office, when they're not. We apply a lot of those same skills today to our ticket sales team, who's doing a lot of cold outreach and trying to bring a great experience to a lot of fans. So not only in my day-to-day, whether it's speaking to sponsors, I still do cold outreach to brand partners to bring them on. A lot of the fundamentals I've learned were from early cold calling at JLL.
So, and I totally agree. I think, taking a class that makes you present in college or after college. My daughter's in musical theater and they got to go do monologues and actually convince people of the story they're telling and not be afraid to get up and present yourself. I think no matter what you do you're going to have to do it, whether it's internal or external. So I totally agree. So you went from, JLL real estate, which, I love real estate, to fitness. And now getting more into that sports world, I guess, that you're still in today. So, and your first thing was endurance fitness. You started a chain. I guess that's your first entrepreneurial thing that you did. How did that form?
It was really interesting. It was my roommate from Dartmouth and we always talked about how do you really gain equity value, and it's through ownership. And so we didn't have a track record. He was working in private equity. I was working in real estate. And we said, hey, there's this really interesting portfolio company that his private equity company invested in called Snap Fitness. And you can open these fitness centers in markets that don't have nice fitness centers for a community. And they provide pretty good yield and great value to customers. And so we looked at that as an opportunity to dip our toes in the water. The upfront costs weren't high. There was a franchise sort of rubric that we could follow that sort of built almost this path of entrepreneurship. And so that was our first business. We put all of our own capital in. It was me. It was actually Paul, who I build the PLO with now, a couple other guys from Dartmouth. And we pulled the capital together and opened our first gym for like $170,000 and created really good returns, like a high 30% IRR for our investors for over 5 years. And we exited that. And then through that process, we started building several more of those. The fitness space in particular, is a passion industry. It's a low barrier of entry industry. And what we found was that the competition was fierce. And so Planet Fitness started emerging. Anytime Fitness started emerging. We had this big plan to roll out 100 gyms. We stopped at about 8. And we luckily exited those. And through that process, we actually opened up a different version of Barry's Boot Camp meets Turnstile Cycle, meets Soul Cycle, which we call Turnstile Cycle, which is our own brand. And then we opened up 4 or 5 of those in Boston and ended up exiting that as well. So I applied a lot of my real estate experience of negotiating leases, find prime opportunities in the right sort of main location, and then providing great products to a customer that, different types of customers. One were towns of 10,000 people. Ones were big city, but learned a lot through that journey, and then which took me to my next experience in fintech. But it was a great experience. I learned a lot from that.
So there's this resounding theme with all the podcast guests I have and the entrepreneurs and success stories is like there was no real plan. It was just having courage to start a gym, courage to open up a lemonade stand when you were young and, actually go through the process of getting your parents to allow you and do all these, cool things. What gave you the courage to then do something that we're going to talk about, which is what's happening today, which is co-founding this league? There was a league, right? The MLL. Mm-hmm. And then, how do you even go about thinking that's something you can do, and where do you find that courage?
I wouldn't say it's all myself. I'd say one, it's having great parents first, who can instill confidence in you. My parents instill a lot of confidence in me, still do. My mom is a huge supporter of, we can do anything we put our minds to. And my dad's a work ethic we model ourselves off. So I think that's first, and that confidence level. I think the second thing, though, is just a lot of self-talk and sort of self-actualization, self-awareness of you only get one shot at life. And I really try to break it down to what is important to me, really, really boil it down. Like, what are the important things in the workplace, right? And we spend so much time at work. We spend more time at work than we do sleeping. We spend oftentimes more time at work than we do with our families. And I think that's shifting, but that's a different conversation. But if you spend that much time at work, you should try to optimize for a few things. At least that's my belief. You should, one, optimize for creating value for your customers and for yourself. And that's why I love startups, where you can have ownership. And the second thing is really working with people that you enjoy being around. I think it's really important to have a value alignment. And sort of being able to embed that into the interview process, so there's a value alignment with everyone, so you enjoy spending time with these people at work. And the third thing is, really learning from people that are smarter than you. I try to surround myself, and I think pretty much everyone at the PLL is smarter than me, spending time with people I can learn from, because you spend so much time at work, and really scoping for different types of intelligence and making sure we're able to weave those folks into our company, and I'm able to spend time with them.
So tell us the day you and your brother said, we're going to do this, and how did that come about? And then give the audience a little on like what's going on right now with the Premier Lacrosse League.
Yeah. So Paul, I'll give you like the 3-minute sort of version of it in that day, because I think it's really interesting. I do reflect on that. The other sort of cliff note, I'd say, and sort of a plug, but also is entertaining, is that we actually have a documentary that ESPN Films acquired last year that was in Tribeca Film Festivals. It debuted in Tribeca Film Festival last year, called Fate of a Sport. It's on Hulu, and it's also on ESPN Plus. Again, Fate of a Sport, and it documents, it's 5 years behind the scenes, the process of building the league, and Paul playing and co-founding the league with me. So, analogy, imagine Dana White fighting and also trying to run the UFC. It's a business story. It's also a sports story. So that'll give you like the real grit. I think that the high level 3-minute is, I remember calling Paul. I would just, we always try to work with each other, but a lot of frustrations with the MLL, like you noted. And I don't want to bash the MLL. I think that those folks that were involved in it laid the foundation for us to even have this opportunity, for me to even be on this podcast. I just think that there were some business model issues that didn't get sorted out, and hopefully we're addressing them in the right way. But those business model issues would flow down to the players. And in the day, the players are the product, right? And so Paul, being the face of the league, one of the best players to ever play, I would spend time on those frustrations. And so there's a bunch of frustrations. And I finally, after my fitness career, and then I worked in tech and moved to San Francisco, I basically said to Paul, I was like, hey, think about what's next. Why don't we go try to, buy a team or acquire the MLL? And so we tried that approach first. I remember where I was standing there and talking to him, and he was like, I don't know, like they'll view me as a serious person. I was like, why would they view me as a serious person? And so we went to Boston a couple of times where they were headquartered out of, and I don't think they viewed us as serious people. And then, eventually if you get told enough and you have enough confidence in a business plan, you kind of just go forward. And Paul really risked a lot because he had sponsorships that were at risk. He had his reputation and what he had built in MLL, winning a couple championships, MVPs, and started a new league would kind of go against that. And so we always try to start with partnership first. It's really important for us. And then if that doesn't work, you got to try to go the alternate route. And so the alternate route was building the PLL, like you mentioned, announcing in 2018, first year in 2019. Now we're on our 5th season here in 2023. I think we've been through a lot of ups and downs. I think that, our second year of going through COVID, having to do a bubble was incredibly mentally and physically challenging. But we've persevered through the noise, which is one of our values, and we've made it through on the other side. And we're just fortunate to be in a place where a major media rights partnership with ESPN and Disney. We have incredible sponsors like Champion, who's our jersey sponsor, and Gatorade, and Ticketmaster, who's our entitlement sponsor. And so, we feel like we're really sort of risen through the hard times, but we have a lot more wood to chop.
Listen, where you've come is crazy good. I mean, it's like you said, it's a startup. What's so cool, it's a sport that's been around for so long that so many people like. They just never been able to see it in the way you're delivering it. I equate it to Broadway, like you're touring, getting people to see the amazing thing about what a lacrosse game can feel like for people that aren't, full-time fans. Obviously you're able to do that economically, but how do you get investors to even buy into this? Because this is not something that, is a little amount of capital. I mean,
Right.
You got
Right.
people, teams, salaries, venues. Also, how do you get them to even believe in this at that point?
I think that's one of the most challenging parts. Honestly, it's what is really hard about starting a league. It's also what makes leagues valuable is the expense load around it. The P&L cost develops a moat itself, right? And so one of the things that we really thought about was comps in the market. And one of the leagues that we looked at was actually, and I don't want to compare us to the NFL, but how the NFL started. NFL is king of sports, obviously domestically here. But if you look at the NFL and you go back to the early 1900s, college football was the preeminent sport for football. And MLB was the number one domestic professional sport. And that was all the way up into the 30s. And then all of a sudden you saw it taken off at the collegiate level. And so these group of folks came together and said, let's start professional football. And we could go deep into that, but that was a comp for us to look at and say, hey, college lacrosse is actually really huge. It's Final Fours. We'll get 60,000 people there. It's on ESPN. College programs, both on the men's and women's side, continue to grow. And it's the oldest sport in North America created by Native people. And we are able to take that story and the beautiful game that is lacrosse, the physicality, the teamwork, the individuality of these players, and have an incredible story. Also honor the game, honor the Native Americans in our sport that are playing professionally, and build off the momentum that college lacrosse has seen, which is not dissimilar from what the NFL did back in the 30s. Now it's going to be a long way to get there. NFL's been around 102 years, 103 years, right? Like we're in our 5th season. But to us, that sort of roadmap gave us some confidence. And if you look at leagues like the MLS, what the MLS has done domestically, I think they're the 5th or 6th ranked best league, not even the best players, but they've had incredible success. And now they've had, David Beckham and Lionel Messi, but just still what they've been able to grow in the last 30 years has been tremendous. And what Don Garber and the team have been able to do over there at such a fast clip gave us confidence that there is a roadmap for this. Now we had to speed up some of the game and the sport and change some of the rules so it fits our consumer, our fan, and where fans are moving towards. But we felt like in The second piece, so that's the story. And then the second piece is business model, right? So you get the story right, and investors are like, okay, I'm hearing you. Now let's talk business model. Business model for us was a lot of it was around single entity, tour-based model, complete C Corp ownership vertically. So we can, it's not for, control. I don't love seeing all those costs on our P&L, but it's what it allows us to do is allow us to simplify messaging to sponsors and to network partners. Those are the biggest revenue verticals, especially early on as a league, and allows us to capture that revenue to sustain those costs, and also be very, very consolidated and efficient with our dollars when we're traveling, right? So for traditional league, you have 32 teams, you have 16 games, 16 different sites. Games are happening, all these different games, all these different times. For us, we have all the games on one time at one location, and the games are separated so all lacrosse fans can watch each game, watch each player. And so that allows for there to be a lot of cost controls and be super efficient with our dollars.
So do you feel digital? I mean, how we're watching sports today, and like you mentioned your documentary, even with the Hard Knocks documentaries on the profession, you get to know the players.
Sure.
Has your experience helped you from being in tech and understanding how to deliver this model? Because live sports is really where it is, but how you deliver it matters too. How has that helped you?
Oh, we would not have been able to launch the PLL 20 years ago without social and digital media, right? It's full stop. And I think I'd take zero credit. Paul is our social media and frankly brand visionary. He had to build his own brand as a lacrosse player. He had to edit his own videos on YouTube. He had to carry around his own, camera to record himself. And he was one of the first power users on Facebook and then Instagram, Twitter. And so he was very proficient in social. And so I remember when we first built our model that we were showing investors, to your question, there was a team of like 25 people. They were all social media people. And I was like, dude, there's just no one's going to take us seriously. Let's slash this in half. We ended up fighting for about a little bit and acquiesced, slashed it, basically in half. Still the biggest team at the time, still is. And we were like, this is the key. This is the unlock. 60% of our fans are Zillennials, Gen Z, millennials. We have to deliver social media, and we have to be able to capture, program, edit, and then send out great video form content that's on mobile, and get under the helmet of these players and really capture who they are. And so that was a big part of our business model. And then also digitally, I take no credit for we have a VP of product who's tremendous. His name is Brendan Coleman, and we've built an app that is an engagement tool for us. Downloads are up actually 300% this year. And it's not because it's some like slick app. It's very slick, but it's the utility inside it. And you have to add and deliver value to your fans. We have fantasy, we have stats, we have content. We have content that doesn't get shown anywhere else. We have post-game pressers. We have a PLL Nation, which is an engagement tool. The more you interact with PLL, the more rewards you can win. So there is a big emphasis around social and digital media, and we absolutely, without the availability of technology, could not do what we are doing now 20 years ago.
It's fun. I just had Untuck It founder Chris Riccobono on the podcast, and he said the same thing. It was earlier, but if there wasn't social media, digital experience, he would have never been able to start that brand as well. I love the fact that we've unlocked the opportunity for all this creativity to start new brands and new concepts and new leagues, which is like, I don't even know how to think about that, but you did. Give me one moment where you actually thought it was all over and you busted through it. And I'm sure there was 50 of those, because I know even in my business, like every day you're blocking and tackling. But like, what would you say was the most unique moment for you and that gave you the confidence to keep going?
I guess two things to that. One was when I thought it was all over, and then two, a moment where it gives me the confidence to keep going. I'd start with the confidence to keep going is small micro moments, honestly. Whether it can be we sell out a venue and that's just like really inspiring. You can see how much the players love it. Or having a conversation with a player where they land a big sponsorship with one of our sponsors, or they have an incredible game and they're like learning off the field and working with us. To me, that's really inspiring. Someone in our company, them being able to rise and become better colleagues and move up in their professional career, and really achieve their personal goals. Those things are like micro moments that keep me really inspired. Honestly, I love lacrosse. I love pro lacrosse. But as you can tell from my background, whether it's slinging ice cream, selling fitness, building financial technology, or professional lacrosse, I'm not really good at anything. I just get really inspired to build businesses with great people, like truly. I know that feels a little bit cliche because a lot of people are tweeting about that, but it's been a theme of mine for a long time. And so that inspires me every day to just keep pushing forward through the hard times. I think that the hardest time, honestly, this is, I'm going to try to I never really talked about it, but there was a time where one of our investors, we're very close with this group now, but it was very hard to get them on for all the reasons you talked about. And there was a moment where I was living in San Francisco with she was my girlfriend at the time, now wife. And we were at dinner with with one of my best friends and his wife. And the next morning I was supposed to fly to New York to meet them to do like another round of pitching and go deep, and got a call from someone on the team that the meeting was canceled. And it wasn't going to be rescheduled and wasn't giving much more information. And, we had this ticking clock, right? So that was our Series A. We had to raise the Series seed. And so we already announced. And we were basically at this place where we had to raise capital. We couldn't start our season. And so I was getting to this place where it was crunch time. It's not great to be under time pressure to launch a league, especially after you already went on Bloomberg and announced the league. And, the meeting was canceled with no subsequent follow-up. And it was a series of meetings. And it was sort of supposed to be the final one. That was a really hard moment. Did a little bit of crying there and felt like we would never get launched and sort of what was next. And thought that it would be over. There were lots of moments after that, but that one really sticks out to me for some reason. COVID was obviously hard, but that was the toughest.
You woke up the next day.
Yeah.
What kept you going? I mean, because it's so easy to fold and say it's over, right? Most people tend to, do that to a point.
I think honestly, I remember exactly what it was. We have an incredible board member. You should have him on this podcast. His name is Colin Neville. He doesn't get enough credit for his support and what he does behind the scenes in the sports ecosystem. He just sold Chelsea. He's a partner at the Rain Group. Actually played lacrosse at Yale. We got on a call with him, and Rain led our first round of financing. And I got on a call with him, and I was like, "Hey, man, I don't know what to do. This just happened." He was supposed to be at that meeting with us, and he was like, "Let me work on this with you guys, and we're going to get this fixed." And Colin used to just jump on calls with us, and I miss talking to him as much. He's doing bigger things these days, but he really was a confidence builder, a confidant. Felt like he was like part of the team, and I'm proud he's on our board now. And I think that when hard times get really hard, yes, there's an internal sort of rubric you can look at. And we talked about some of those and learning experiences, but also the network you keep around, the people that are close to you, especially early days, your early board are basically incubating the company with you. And so I think that having a really strong early board is important.
Two things from this answer: micro gratitudes. It's like a new quote. Micro gratitudes, actually being grateful for all the little teeny things, because that's really what keeps you and drives you forward and gives you the courage. And then relationships, like actually strategically first, but developing relationships. They're not just there to get you where you want to go. You actually got to get to know someone so they're there when you're at your moment where you're crying because your meeting was just canceled. I love that. I'm so happy you went through that, because you're going to have many more of those growing this gigantic thing you're going to create. And you need to know that that's what's most important. So today, it's going. It's 5 years in the making. I mean, I'm seeing it on TV. I'm loving that. I went to Syracuse. Lacrosse was a big thing at my school. You used to go to the games, but you never really saw it anywhere else. It was very much, a big, gigantic, everyone into it at Cuse. So you now have this playoff, I guess. You're coming to Long Island. You're coming to our area. So you want to talk a little bit about that, and I guess it's the playoffs and get everybody up to speed.
Yeah. I appreciate that. And I know that you're a Northeast Corridor, New Jersey, New York guy, and there's a lot of folks who listen to you in the area. I think, one of the cool things about this season, obviously been our fifth season, our second year of our partnership with ESPN. It's been great. Our viewership is up 25% year over year across platform. I talked about, a lot of other things, ticket sales are up 24% so far this year. But the really cool thing we're excited about is, as you mentioned, heading to Long Island, specifically at Hofstra University on September 10th, that Sunday, for our semifinals. So this weekend, we're playing at Salt Lake City. That wraps up our regular season. And our quarterfinals are actually next weekend, Labor Day weekend, in Boston at Gillette. And then we head to Long Island, which we're really excited about. So that Sunday, the first game is at 3 o'clock. It'll be on ABC. And then the second game, it'll be a doubleheader, will be at 5:30 Eastern. So we're pumped about. We love Hofstra University. We love the fans on Long Island in the Northeast Corridor. We're excited to bring our semifinals there and to kick off the weekend on ABC.
So how do people get tickets? How do they, learn more about what you do when you come here and how the whole tour works?
Yeah, man. I mean, look, if you want to come, PLLtickets.com is the easiest way to get tickets while they're still available. And then PremierLacrosseLeague.com, all of our information. Or our app is, as I talked about, that sound like I'm doing a lot of plugging, but it's truly where our fans get the best experience, just PLL.app. to learn everything there. Schedules, tickets, tune in, fantasy lacrosse, which runs all the way through the playoffs, which we're really pumped about. It's a great experience that we've been building where each fantasy fan can be its own GM and you manage cap space on a week-to-week basis. So it's really cool. And you can follow us on Instagram at PLL.
Love it. So a couple more questions because I know you're busy.
Yeah.
The players.
Yeah.
I know players that played, college lacrosse and are so happy that this is happening. How can players that aren't in the league, because I actually spoke to one of them today, how can they get involved and be an ambassador to what's going on? Because they're also excited that you're doing this and they all want to play a role, but not everyone knows exactly how to do that.
Yeah, it's a great question. So we are developing a system for honoring former professional lacrosse players. And so we're in the process of rolling out end of year. So either guys in the MLL or former PLL players where they're going to be taking on more of an ambassadorship and have hopefully receiving value from our platform in the PLL. So more of that to come, which we're really excited about. And that's under the leadership of our VP of lacrosse, Rachel DeCecco, who's a 2-time Tewaaraton winner at Princeton. She's a legend in the sport. The other piece, if you're not a former pro, is honestly just reach out. We want help. We need help. We have open roles. We need advice and we need feedback. And so if you are excited about what we're doing, I'd love, and you played lacrosse at any level, I'd love for you to personally reach out to me on LinkedIn. I respond to almost all of our DMs, and I'd love to spend time to learn what your observations are. Every fan matters. And every former player or parent of a player matters. One of the things that we do that's different than most leagues is we give our players ownership, and because they are taking risk in this early part of the league, right? And we want to obviously grow our revenue and ostensibly grow player salaries. But while we're in the early stages of that, each player, we want them to have ownership, and so that's something that it's really important to us, and we think. That's one of the reasons why I'm here is for the ownership in the league, and I want the players to have that as well.
Well, I think you're doing it. You're going to have a lot of twists and turns as time goes on, but I'm wishing you the best of luck. I know everyone I know that loves lacrosse is so happy that this is happening. Everyone go, check out the semifinals at Hofstra. That's going to be amazing. And I want to just thank you for coming on. And I know everyone's going to love this because the story is so unique. And listen, to say you're going to start a league is just mind-boggling to me. BHAGs, these big, hairy, audacious goals that we all set and we never do. You're doing it. Good luck. And again, I appreciate you for being on.
Awesome. Thank you for having me, John. I really appreciate it, man. This was great.
Hi, John Schultz here. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. Would really appreciate it if you would like, comment, subscribe, and share with your friends. Looking forward to being with you soon.